This is lesson 2 of the research into the orchestra. Here is your bellwork task, which you were to post the answer to on Classroom, looking at putting the musical eras in order. If you didn't know, just Google it. Once you've done it, you'll see that we started off with the Baroque period from 1600 to 1750, Classical 1750 to 1830, Romantic. There was a bit of a crossover period of about 15 years, so 1850 to 1910, and then the modern being 1910 to present day. So let's look at how it evolved over the years. We started off with the Baroque orchestra, where we had normally around about 10 to 30 players, mostly being on strings. You tended to have violin, double bass, cello and viola in the string section, and then only really a flute, oboe and trumpet, and then a harpsichord making up the rest of the orchestra. Harpsichord because a piano had yet to be invented. We moved then from the Baroque orchestra to a classical orchestra, which used around 30 to 60 instrumentalists, and we started to see a bigger family in terms of the amount of instruments in each family. And we had the strings, woodwind, brass and percussion, and each section had its own particular role. The strings were the most important, with the first violins, who normally sat here taking the melody, and then the lower strings providing the accompaniment, and then the woodwind adding contrasting sounds, and just generally everybody having their own sound within that orchestra. We moved forward to the Romantic orchestra, which then started, you saw orchestras with over 100 people involved, and a greater use of brass instruments, so more brass coming through in songs, and a bigger use of the piano. Romantic music, it was tended to be more passionate, hence why it was called Romantic, and it's still quite popular today, and inspired a lot of the music that we hear today. Moving forward, we then decided to scale back a little bit, and we're having orchestras over 100 people in Romantic, to the modern orchestra almost being capped at around 100 players. When you're talking about 60 to 70 of those being on strings alone. So that's, we've grown from that all the way through to a bigger orchestra. You are going to use the internet to research information about a composer from each of the eras, and then you're going to listen to an extract from each of the era and describe the music using at least 2 musical elements. The first era is Baroque, then Classical, then Romantic, and then Modern. Within each one, you are given a choice of 3 composers, so J.S. Bach, Handel, and Corelli for the Baroque music. In your workbook, you'll see exactly the same slide, but the next slide will have space for you to write in. So you put your composer's name here, and then type in the information about the composer. Just a bit of background information about his life and who he was. Then you need to listen to the piece that's attached to the slide, at roughly about 3 minutes for each one, and answer the question here. So write about the Air on G String by J.S. Bach using at least 2 musical elements. If you're struggling with the musical elements, the very last slide on your workbook is the lyrics to the Elements of Music song, which I know you all know how to sing. Don't make me sing it for you. When you've done the Baroque, go on to Classical, where you've got Mozart, Haydn and Beethoven. Listen to the piece, answer the questions. Romantic, Chopin, Schumann and Wagner. And then to modern day, where you've got John Williams, who everybody will have heard of. I had to choose a Harry Potter one. Hans Zimmer and Yoko Shimomura. Anything you don't complete needs to be completed for homework. Any questions, pop them on Classroom or drop me an email.